Okay, well, welcome to a new community call. So this is May, I think May 10 or 11. And the main thing for this week is the launch of the Bridge. It's almost done, and we are now preparing all of the launch campaign and all of the tools that we need to have in place for launching that. As you know, this is an important part of the architecture that will lead to the Kleros V2. And so most of my time is into this. And also, we are doing pilot with a quite important company that I cannot say the name, but you might have noticed that there was a governance proposal to create a new court that we are going to use for this pilot. This is more like a Web 2.5 type of use case. It's a quite important company, and we have been working quite hard in the past few weeks to implement a bunch of things that are required for this type of integrations, because we have to load the dispute, and there is an interface between the Web 2 world and Kleros that needs to be bridged for now in a manual way. So working on the flow for how this would work. So we are going to do this test in the few days, and we already did a bunch of tests, but in a private setting. Now this is going to be done in the actual Kleros setting, and if this works, this can be a really important and steady flow of cases for Kleros. So that's a really good thing. All of these types of integrations are super slow in the sense of traditionally, in companies, they want to understand how Kleros works. They want to understand a number of things that how the integration will work. There are also, in particular, in companies that come from the mainstream economy, concerns about privacy of data of users, a bunch of things that we have to deal with. But everything seems to be sorted now, so we plan to get started with this very, very soon. So if you speak Spanish, good for you, because you can get some cases. So that's the second main thing for the week. Then a lot of stuff going on. Well, you might have seen the Aragon thing. So this Aragon team now is completely different to the one that we had the drama. I don't even remember when it was. I think it was 2019. Do you remember, William, when this was? 2019.
I don't remember exactly. The years always blur together.
Yeah, that was all days. But I mean, to me, I'm not going to comment on the substance of what happened, but this is super. Telling of how badly the ecosystem needs constitutions, and how DAOs need better governance rules than just majority voting, and so this is something that we are currently working with. So you know already about the Zodiac integration, but we have been working quite a bit in the past few months with Blockchain Gov. Blockchain Gov is a research group that is led by Primavera de Filippi, who is a very important researcher in blockchain and pioneer, and she wrote this very famous book, Blockchain and the Law. I think it's from 2014 or something, or 15 maybe. Super early days, and we are trying to figure out how should a constitutional process work in the context of a DAO, basically. So how should be separation of powers? How should we? What is the best way to do? Should we use like liquid voting? Should we use a filter key? Should we use, whatever? So lots of things that were used, in the early days of constitutions are kind of coming back, and so we plan to turn this research into a type of kind of handbook on guide to make a constitution for a DAO, which we plan to launch at some point in the future. So we're most of the work is being done by this academic research group, and we already provide some support and some of our expertise, and of course we want Kleros to be introduced into the framework that they are building. So you might have read the ethnographic research that was done by Jamila about proof of humanity, and that is part of the input that we are using to try to figure out what should this handbook look like, and what should be the steps to build a constitution. And also, it's quite interesting to see how many things are happening in the DAO space, and how many of the decentralization attempts that DAOs do end up in dramas. So, well, you already know about humanity, but this is just one. And I would say it's not the big one because it didn't have like a lot of money at stake, but there are other, governance conflicts that really have a very big amounts of money, like the MakerDAO, for example, with all of the core unit process they did, and then had to change it and all that. Then, of course, Aragon is a very big, treasury. So yeah, lots of stuff on that side. Also, I'm now in Paris. I'm come to teach here every year. We have there is a course on legal tech where lots of lawyers from France come to learn about the application of technology into law, and there is part of the program includes a section on Kleros. I have a piece of good news. I don't know if this is public, so I'm just going to say it here, but don't say it outside. So Kleros is going to be part of actually a master's program. There's going to be a module on decentralized justice. So now, I guess we are becoming mainstream. So that's a super great news, but not official. So if you, I will deny having said this. Delete this part of the recording, Jim, please, because it's, not official yet. That's fine. You don't need to delete it. And then, so these are mostly the big news for this week. I will let William comment on his week, and maybe William, you can also explain a bit on how the parameters are affected when you have like big spikes in gas, and how you deal with that. Maybe some people are going to be interested by that.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about how updating the general the sort of mainnet parameters because there's a big spike in gas recently. So one of the unfortunate features of V1 of Kleros is the governance process. While robust and decentralized, is also kind of slow. It takes several weeks, so it can be difficult to adapt to really sharp spikes in gas. Part of how one prepares for that in advance is that in the sort of heuristics and sort of constraints that I use when I generate parameters that I propose for governance, there's a pretty wide range of gas prices that are programmed in as the calculator trying to be compatible with those gas prices. So there are specifically 3 values that I put into the calculator that I sort of try to estimate, the sort of normal gas price that an average juror can expect to pay during a period of when the parameters are in force, a particularly low gas price that maybe an attacker is getting if they're malicious. I don't know. So that's the gas that we assume the attacker is paying in any kinds of attacks. That's a bit less important, but it's still one of the things you enter. And then sort of like a max gas price, at which point, if the like gas goes beyond that, like you have serious problems, where like the calculator's constrained so that the like parameters generated are always give higher fees to the jurors than the gas price they would pay if you hit that sort of max extreme value. With like it, even then, like if you have like maybe around with 3 jurors or something, even if you're at the max gas price value, if you have maybe only, like the gas environment's really high, so maybe like 1 or 2 of the jurors don't vote because it's really expensive to vote, all of the reward would go to the remaining person. So the reward would be even bigger, and it would then be higher than the max gas price. But anyway, so I have this like sort of range of gas prices we estimate, and then we, like the calculator generates parameters that are tries to be compatible with those gas prices. Like that works well as long as the like changes aren't so sharp that you like run out of the range by any time it takes you to update the parameters.
And now it went out of range, right?
Yeah, it did. So in the like November parameter proposal, so we hadn't even really needed to like update the parameters since then. Like the sort of like fluctuations of gas had been really low. ETH had gone up somewhat, but it's like like not crazy compared to the values of like sort of the constraints we had. But in the previous parameter update, the gas estimates were, I think, like 30 or 40 gwei for the normal and like 80 gwei for max. And of course, we're way over that. So the good news there is that like that constraint isn't always sharp. So in a lot of courts, it's still the case that if you vote, the gas you pay will be less than the fee. This is particularly true, again, if you're in a court that has multiple jurors and like some of them aren't voting because the gas is so high and you're the one who does. If you get all of the fees, you're way over the max. But it's a particularly difficult gas environment right now.
Yeah, but it's going to get better. Good. Okay. And what else, William? Do you want to comment about the article that was published?
Yeah. So I had an academic article that was published in an economics journal last week. So I already mentioned this on the call last week. I tweeted about this in the interim where I sort of like tried to discuss some of the highlights from the article and sort of general public terms. And I gave some links to some like talks I've given where I try to like explain related ideas, and maybe it would be like a good intro before you look at the actual article. So it's a lot of stuff about the kinds of research I've done on how to do like design shelling games for Kleros and Kleros-like sort of cases where you have non-binary disputes that work well. So it draws on this academic field called social choice theory. That's all about how you get people's sort of preferences and the information they provide on decisions when you have multiple outcomes, more than 2 outcomes, and how you aggregate that into a collective outcome that like reflects what the community is voting on in a way that isn't too vulnerable to things like vote splitting and like attacker manipulation. The article also draws on like another academic field called peer prediction, which has to do with like in a very sort of Kleros way with incentivizing people to provide information on like sort of like crowdsourced tasks. And like traditionally the field of peer prediction hasn't thought too much about preference, like the aggregation of votes into a collective outcome in kind of the way you have to if you have an attacker model that's like in a sort of really hostile world of blockchain attacks, where an attacker is trying to both manipulate people's payouts and potentially trying to manipulate the aggregation into like the collective outcome. So you really need to like sort of put this like the incentives and the outcome aggregation together, and that's kind of that's like a main theme of the article.
I have been sharing that article to everyone, so yeah, good job. And I got a notification today from SSRT that our article on decentralized justice is trending again. So yeah, I mean it's in the top 10 of I don't know what. So yeah, well, I guess there was interest on that. So yeah, congratulations to you and to me and to Jamila, who is here, I think. Yeah. And to Jan and Nadir. Okay, so that's on the side of research. Then business development. I mean, here is Marcos. I can just comment that we're having a lot of traction, with the social social recovery use case that we published an article 2 weeks ago, I think, and this seems to be like a great use case, and we are actually getting lots of inbound requests from different projects to use Kleros as a social recovery tool. So I'm super happy about that, and OneMan is working a lot on that. I don't know, Marcos, if you have any other comment from the point of view of business development.
Yep, hey there. With the social recovery, OneMan has been working more than me, but yeah, we have some updates. First, a good news is that DeFi Education, that is an Argentinian Web3 educational project, accepts to give our workshop on one of their courses. So we're going to be giving our workshop on July the 24th. And then this week we received some projects that were interested in using some escrow, another one curate, and I think there were 2 or 3 interested in using our course. So yeah, it was a move week for the BD team.
Yeah, and about curate, we also have full revamp coming. We have one person now that is Akil, that is going to actually work basically full time now on curate. So that's, well, as you know, the product of Kleros that has more traction so far because of different reasons, and now we have finally found a person that can actually be in charge of that. So that's going to include all of the the app tokens that is used for DeFi, and then the application of the same logic into NFTs. As you know, we see Curate as a very important piece of of infrastructure that can help for lots of problems in NFT marketplaces, like copyright infringement, stolen NFTs. So if you want to learn more about that, you can see my talk at the DHCC last year, or if you want to see it in Spanish, you can watch Jean's talk. What conference was that? It Latam, Jean?
Yes. I see Scott unmuted himself. Maybe he wants to talk about NFTs or something.
Hey guys, I was just eavesdropping. It's been a while. I just had some questions around the account abstraction and security there. Like, what's the specific use case for the core? Would it be verifying IDs or?
To verify that the person that wants to recover the account is actually the person that is the owner.
And what material would the court be looking at there? Would it be IDs or?
I think what was it, Marcos? Do you remember what is? I'm not following this that closely. Exactly, what is the type of evidence that is going to be looked by the jurors? Oh, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, can you repeat the question, Federico?
What type of the connection is over, but what type of evidence are jurors going to be looking at into the social recovery type of use case?
When we have been working more with that, so I can answer the question in detail, and there to have when we have for this.
Yeah, okay, we will.
One of the solutions.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. One of the solutions is to have a kind of a smart contract vault, basically, or multi-sig or something like that, that has Kleros as one of the parties that can move the NFT. But there are several different implementations. But I can share one of the one that INF Protect is using.
Yeah, that's cool. And then has Kleros moved to like any L2 yet?
We are in the process of building the V2 version that is going to be on a rollup. But maybe, William, you want to give more detail about this, how it's going to work?
I mean, so in terms of right now, there's like a version on Gnosis chain, but so like in V2, the idea is that the main home version of Kleros will be on some yet to be determined rollup, probably optimistic rollup. We have plans about what rollup to use, but like final decision pending. And then we have this like bridge system we intend to use to like bridge rulings to other chains, including Ethereum.
But if you were using like an OP chain, wouldn't it like the message be like Optimism already has its own bridge, right?
Yeah, but you'd have to wait 7 days for your ruling to be executed, which is like sort of like suboptimal user experience. So basically, you still there?
You can continue, William, maybe.
Yeah. So basically, the idea of the VIA bridge, which is this bridge that we've been, that Kleros has been developing to sort of accompany the launch of V2, is that if you always use the sort of native bridges of the optimistic rollups, or like whatever sidechain bridges they have, those can be slow and particularly they can be expensive. Particularly if you're like bridging between, say, you want to bridge from Optimism to Arbitrum, or vice versa. Then like normally the like native bridge way would be to wait 7 days and go through L1 and then bridge to the other side, which both includes like a delay and like L1 gas costs. So the idea of the VIA bridge is that basically you can just go to the chain where the ruling needs to be executed, where the arbitrable smart contract is that's waiting for a ruling, and you can claim with a deposit, this is like the ruling is X, and if somebody challenges you, then you wait for the slow bridge. So you wait for the native bridges,
I see. So you would wait for like the finality on the native chain.
Right. But that's kind of the unhappy path. Like someone can grief you and like force you to wait, but they're going to be losing a deposit that would at least cover, so for example, the gas costs of going through L1, and maybe some compensation for your time. And in the happy path, then you get faster execution.
And what if like what if like the decisions need to be made on like different OP chains? Like, is it quicker then? Like because then like the finality like timeline is also baked into like the like decision as well. Like yeah. Like I guess it's easier if like everything's native on like Optimism instead of like Optimism and Arbitrum.
Yeah, but the thing is that like in the long term, like Kleros is going to exist on a single rollup somewhere, and it's like a single implementation of rollup. So like one copy of Arbitrum or one copy of Optimism, or etc. But like for these scaling solutions to actually work, they're going to need to make many copies. So like if say Arbitrum becomes like the scaling solution where everyone is using Arbitrum and even like the other ones are sort of less used, then like personally I would expect there to be many copies of Arbitrum, where like like you're using the same sort of protocol in parallel, but you have different chains that can't natively communicate with each other, because if you put everything on a single chain, it had like a single sequencer and sort of single verification game, then you're recreating the scaling problems we already have. Like the verifiers on that chain would need to be able to like look at the entire state of the chain they're verifying, which, if you scale to however many NX of the current capacity of Ethereum, would strain the validator's capacity to do so. So you really need to be able to go between different chains, even if you're using even if it's all Arbitrum or all optimism.
Well, yeah, I'm really excited for V2. Congrats, guys, on getting on top of that. Seems really interesting, and yeah, probably going to open up the doors for a lot more jurors and use cases around social.
Yeah, and also, V2 also includes different, more sophisticated decision-making logics that are actually required by some of the potential companies that or protocols that could integrate. Like, for example, having jurors rank options, or having jurors pick a value for a settlement. And yeah, it's not just about costs; it's also about the decision-making logic that we get asked a lot by different projects, and we still don't have this in V1. So yeah. Okay. Let me see, what else do we have, Jean? What from you?
Yes, I will just briefly mention some stuff from the weekly recap. Well, we have finally the recording of Shotaro presentation about VIA, and where some of these advantages of using VIA are mentioned, and it's the first piece of content that it's easy to understand about VIA for non-technical people. So
do watch that talk. Yeah, I understood VIA with that talk.
Me too. Did not want to say that, but yeah, me too. And the team is working on VIA scan and making some tests on VIA, so there will be some updates soon.
Have you shared VIA scan already with the community? I don't know.
Yeah, I shared one. Yeah, I shared one screenshot, but it's better now, so I need to update it. And there we'll have information soon about VIA. And we're still working with Ledger to be able to make an announcement about the registry. It's receiving the CDN registry is still receiving submissions, and there's an incentive program, so make sure you use that. And Purpose Wrong posted their first article that explains how it works. Prode is working with Connext for an integration that makes it cross-chain, which is very cool. Like the Prode cases are still on Gnosis chain, but users can make their bets on any chain that is supported by Connext. And
actually, we have some member from Prode in the call. Maybe he wants to tell us what's coming from them, if he wants. Otherwise, it's okay. No? Okay. Well, I don't want to pressure anyone.
Yes, they're a bit shy. I invited them, but
that's fine. Okay.
And but yeah, they have more things coming about ease of use, and I'm really excited because this is if they win this, break these barriers of access. This is something that other projects that use Kleros could benefit from. So that's nice. And Lenstex is testing their project, and they yesterday the Bitcoin beta round just finished, and they were the first project on donations in their round, the Web3 Social. So I would like to congratulate them on that. And UBI, the marketplace, they just integrated push protocol for notifications, and they now have a lens profiles for the people that don't have Pool of Humanity profile yet. And there's also some intro about Estia, which is something like a TaskRabbit on Web3 that will integrate Kleros. And yeah, I believe that's it. There's the events that are coming. The Fever Tokens event. It's this Friday in Paris. I think we can talk more about it.
Yeah. So Fever Tokens is a company that they are into the NFT business, and they provide like infrastructure for different marketplaces that are for NFTs, and this includes traditional, for example, artworks, but other use cases of NFTs. Like for example, they have one of their portfolio projects is NFTs that represent like a ownership part in football players, right? So all of these type of use cases have the problem of, as you know, the problem of copyright in the case of artwork, and then in the particular case of, for example, the football players application, there is a payment of, or that or others, there's a payment of a royalty that happens off chain, and so you would need some way to verify if the payment of the royalty was done according to what was expected, and if this was not, if there was a dispute about whether the payment was or wasn't done, well, guess who is going to resolve that? And then based on the ruling made by Kleros, this the token can be sent back to the owner, a logic like that. So Fever Tokens is a company, a French company. Also, they are supported by the BPI, like Kleros. So BPI is an very important innovation bank from France, and it's one of the Kleros funders. And we are working on them on an integration that is going to bring Kleros closer to NFT marketplaces. So on Friday, we're going to have an event to discuss all this and to present it to the community. So super excited about that as well. And well, I guess that's it for this week, guys. Thank you all for coming, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye, Federico. See you next week.